away from his home in his underwear in freezing temperatures, complete humiliation. While the man's grandson is left to the unknown. I think neighbors took the grandson. ICE gets down the road with this gentleman and realizes that they got the wrong man. Imagine for a second that happening to you, to your loved ones, to your children. This is the very fabric of the United States of America, the social contract, the tethers that bind me to every single other American citizen, regardless of their classification, whatever kind of classifications human beings have invented, race or religion or whatever way, a gender, all that stuff, right? There is a bond between every single human being that is called an American citizen. There is a sacred and inviolable bond that we've just kind of always expected was protected by rational human beings in leadership, in government, and that we could depend on the just and equitable administration of state power. The United States of America and every single state of our holy union. That is untenable at best and needs to be addressed right now at worst. Hello again, Kola Yuha Chichab Buju Ani. I want to say hello again to all my relatives. This is Chase Iron Eyes on AM950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. And this is Native American Patriot Talk. And I'm so happy to jump back in. I was talking about the gentleman in St. Paul that was brutalized, whose home was brutalized. It was illegally entered. ICE admitted that they had the wrong guy. And the numbers are out that ICE has removed 3,000 people. And of that, it's some obscenely low number who are actual criminals. And the language that is used by ICE, by Homeland Security, is that they want to remove the criminals, the pedophiles, the rapists, and the murderers. And again, these are old tropes that this particular bloc relies on to foment and to instigate the fears and the insecurities that might exist within their certain demographic, to make a population feel licensed, or to effectively otherize human beings, and make some of us think that others are vermin. But if you're, as we see now, this is a topic for another show, but as we see with the Epstein files debacle, the continued and ongoing release of every single tranche of information that has been hidden from the American people and has been hidden from the world, we're going to find out another level of criminals and pedophiles and rapists and murderers. And that is a heavy subject for us to go through as Minnesotans and as Americans. Now, just to remind you, I've been on the ground since January 10th. And as a recap, I've been functioning and performing my duties as an attorney and making sure that no Native American who's profiled or illegally targeted or even who's been arrested by ICE in functioning in their duties along with other Minnesotans as constitutional observers. We talked a little earlier about the inalienable rights, the rights that we're supposed to have that are supposed to be inviolable as by virtue of our birth as American citizens. And just to take you back even further, I don't even remember the month. The last 6 months have been a blur to me because I remember when ICE was active in California, in Los Angeles, and then somewhere around that time, the Trump administration issued guidance, filed in some pleadings. In some pleadings, whoever the Department of Justice counsel was challenged the idea that even Native Americans should not or might not be entitled to birthright citizenship. There is nobody more American than American Indians. Like we just full stop on that. What is America? We are America. Native Americans, we entered into sacred covenants with the founders of these great United States. If you go back in your lineage, and no matter who you are in our country, you go back in your lineage and say, yes, you are European American. You maybe you came on the Mayflower. Like a good brother that I know. Maybe you came to Ellis Island. Maybe your people came to through Ellis Island. However you found your way here, Native America has always been ready to welcome you. Native Americans have always been willing to offer through trade, friendship, and even love and compassion. We've always been willing to offer a hand up and to recognize the United States of America as a fledgling and younger body politic as compared to Native America. I mean, more than 500 tribal nations who express their sovereignty in this soil that is now the United States of America and Canada, in the entire Western Hemisphere, and even globally. But Native Americans have fought on each side of in multiple sides of every single conflict in what is now called the United States. And so when I talk about why do I call this show Native American Patriot Talk? It's because my people, I'm also a Sioux national. Ocheti Shakoi, Wichasha Hema Chayelo. My grandfathers, at the advisement of my grandmothers, entered into treaties with the United States. And Native Americans, through the various treaties going back to 1776 and prior to that, Native Americans have negotiated citizenship within and proximate to and adjacent to the United States in various ways. So when people like Stephen Miller call into question and challenge birthright citizenship of Native Americans, that is a signal that we have gone awry. We have gone far astray from whatever legitimacy, because everybody wants safety. Everybody wants peace. Nobody wants the criminals, the rapists, the pedophiles, and the murderers of any demographic, of any immigration status. Nobody wants that. We all want safe communities, but what we're seeing in Minnesota is not this surgical, precise, targeted, legal and constitutional operation. No, that's not what we're seeing. Then tell me why two good American citizens were executed on camera in broad daylight. And there's more to be done. That is extremely traumatic for our children to see. And now we have a situation where ICE is they're at least presenting and projecting the idea that they're demobilizing. If you all remember, and that's what I mean. I empathize. I truly empathize with my fellow Americans and with our people, our citizenry, those who are trying to put the pieces back together, because we just had to watch something tyrannical. And I won't, everybody knows that the Bill of Rights and the US Constitution exist to authorize every single citizen to prevent tyranny and to prevent fascism. And this is what we've been through. This is what we are going through. We didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for a war to be declared on American families. We didn't ask for an attempted overthrow of constitutional order. Because what happens when federal agents who are supposed to uphold the law are violating the Constitution? What kind of situation does that leave MPD in? What kind of situation does that leave Governor Walton or Attorney General Ellison? What kind of situation does that leave our highway patrol in? Every single Minnesotan National Guard family. What kind of a situation does that leave us in? That is what we've been talking about for ever since Trump took office. We've been talking about a constitutional crisis. And at first, it was just, whether or not Trump was going to disobey the Supreme Court of the United States, which is no small matter. That is so foundational and archetypal to American constitutional sovereignty. We're talking about Marbury versus Madison, in which, the Supreme Court reserved to itself the power of judicial review, meaning that they would be the final arbiters. The Supreme Court would be the final arbiters of what would be considered law and order, what would be considered constitutional order. But for the people of Minnesota and other states too, I focus, we zero in directly on Minnesota because that's where I've been living. That's where I've been laying my head. That's where I've been greeting the sun. And it is not normal what we're going through. It is not normal to see federal officers violating the Constitution of American, the constitutional rights of American citizens. It's not normal to see people illegally entering the home of American citizens, or showing up and pretending like they have a warrant, announcing very loudly that they have a warrant when it's only an administrative warrant. It's not normal for Native Americans or Black and brown people to be driving down the street and be completely afraid that somebody is going to apprehend them and check their papers. You all know where we've seen that kind of activity. And some of the media that I've done is with, for instance, Italian media. And they remember this woman that I interviewed with has a grandmother who remembers Benito Mussolini when Mussolini was alive. She was like a little girl. I don't know what the age is. It could be her great grandmother, whatever it is. Fascism is very fresh in their collective lived experiences. And they see what's happening in our country. They see what's happening in the United States of America, which is supposed to be and has the potential to be the shining city on the hill, right? To quote Ronald Reagan. That is our birthright and our potential to be what Martin Luther King dreamed we could be. To be the greatest country on the earth, the greatest experiment, the founding fathers. When I say we have a controverted history, I mean that those founding fathers are not phenotypically or biologically my founding fathers, but they are now, because I'm fully cognizant of those rights that they expounded upon. And they were drawing from what they considered to be the brightest and most potent sources of law, of intellect, the Western canon, which flowed directly from the Enlightenment period and scientific supremacy period. And so they were doing what they could. They were doing their best. Were they creatures of their time? Of course. Was there a time where females were considered property and not allowed to vote or own their own bank accounts and have financial autonomy, and whose bodily autonomy is still at risk in being attacked? Yes. Yes. Was there a time when African brilliance were considered slaves, chattel property? Yes. Was there horrible things done? Yes. Were Native Americans considered subhuman or Saracen or pagan or barbaric or antithetical to progress and civilization? Yes. Yes. But I'm still an American. Nahakshi unkumpi. We are still here. And we've taken, just like Sitting Bull said, in this new road that is presented, if you see something good, you pick it up. If you see something bad, you leave it alone. You leave it be. So we have a duty and we have an obligation to create the reality that we want to see for our children. That's another Sitting Bull axiom. Let us put our minds together and see what life we can build for our children. So now let me go back to ICE and ICE announcing. There's too many updates, and this is the first episode of Native American Patriot Talk on AM950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. And the show will evolve, but I'm giving an update to all interested parties, all stakeholders who appreciate the gravity, who recognize the weight and the heft and the existential threat that is presented by a rogue and radical fringe that controls and arm an institution of American state power. And that legally and arguably, and to me, objectively and reasonably, is usurping, is criminally seizing that power and using it against American constitutional order, in executing it against American families, whether or not they have an appropriate guise to do that. And then for them, it's of course immigration, illegal immigration. And this is an issue that, of course, that side of the aisle dominated on. They were able to stoke enough fear that the hordes and the caravans, if you remember that rhetoric, there's too many things to pay attention to. This is what is called flooding the zone, and that's a Steve Bannon strategy to just hit the American people with so many abhorrent, um, intense challenges, threats, challenges, impositions of fascistic or tyrannical authority, the increase of the militarized police state, and to attack on every front, whether it's judicial, punishing states for their progressive views, and withholding funding from colleges, withholding federal funding from anybody who has the audacity to be American, to seek true American patriotic values, to respect each other as Americans, to know that our strength lies in respecting each other's unique and powerful lineages, histories, backgrounds, differences, but also more importantly, our commonalities, the things that bind us as relatives. And that's, for as a Lakota person, that is a very sacred vow that we take when we create relatives. But I've been able to witness the trauma that Minneapolis has been put through, and because ICE is announcing a drawdown, and we have our ear to the street. So just because a cosplaying, Nazi or SS look at whatever he was trying to present, whatever image Bovino was trying to present, something happened, something shifted in their strategy because they pulled him out, and it's only because the good people of Minnesota stood in the power of their peace. The good people of Minneapolis, St. Paul didn't take the bait. These other forces, these tyrannical forces, are trying so hard to goad American people into violence because they control that realm. They have a monopoly on violence. If they can get you to commit violence, well then, it's RIP, or you're a political prisoner, or you're investigated. Your privacy rights are violated, like they're doing right now. Anybody who's criticized ICE, Kristi Noem has got it's not a judicial warrant, but it's a warrant that she issued, the Department of Homeland Security issued, and some platforms like Meta, like others, are appearing to comply with it, meaning that they're giving our data. If you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram and you're posting, I stand with Minnesota, with the new the loon symbol. Isn't that such a powerful symbol? It united us all. And just for speaking freely, this is what I mean, that these inalienable rights, everything's in flux right now. We're literally renegotiating those terms through which we're willing to live our lives. The social contract, the social contract, and the federal contract, the contract between the state of Minnesota and the United States. So we have to think clearly. It's hard when you're in the fight. It's hard to pick your head up out of the scrum and see the forest, above the trees. And so there are things that can be done to prevent illegal activity when it's instigated by federal officials. We have to make sure that Governor Walz, that Attorney General Ellison have all the support from the private bar, from the scholars, from the activists or the intellectuals, and the people who recognize the threat that is posed by the destabilization of constitutional order. there are things that we can do, but we need to work together. Even if no matter what your political classification is, or whatever you think it is, there are certain things like tyranny that we should all be truthful about, and we should all seek out each other's perspectives on how to deal with something like that. Because and that could take the form of many in many forms. It could take many forms. For example, I want to just thank the Minnesota State Senate Committee on Federal Impacts. That might not be the full name, but it's a very it's a very important committee, because the state of Minnesota, not only the state, but every municipality, every city, every county, every NGO, every nonprofit, every organization, keep track of every single dime that you've spent, and how your scope of work had to change to respond to ICE's activity in this great state. Keep track of all of that, because I came from the state of North Dakota as well when the Dakota Access Pipeline was being pushed through. And the state of North Dakota sued the federal government for $38 million. The numbers that are being spent here to defend the republic, to defend American constitutional sovereignty, to defend the integrity and sanctity of the United States Constitution from ICE, it's got to be in the hundreds of millions. What is that total economic impact? I don't know, but we need to keep track of that, because there will be a day of reckoning. We will have our day in court. We will hold every single ICE agent accountable. I mean, we could start there. We could start with a mask ban. Why? Isn't that the creepiest, the scariest, like a horror movie, right? Imagine your children driving down the road. They're coming back from basketball practice or wrestling practice or whatever. Here are now combat ready, jackbooted personnel in masks with no identifying insignia. Like, I talked to the Hennepin County sheriffs, not all the time, but there's a Dakota landback camp happening near Fort Snelling. And so I talked to the Hennepin County sheriffs, as a legal advisor. And what I noticed about the Hennepin County sheriffs, for one, they're not wearing masks. They're not wearing balaclavas or shiesties. They're not wearing a hyper militarized kit. You know what? These Hennepin County Sheriff's Department personnel don't have masks on. They look you in the eye. They're friendly in their intake, in their process, and they have names. They have name badges. So we as Minnesotans, as people who are going through this together, need to not let the momentum stop. Just because ICE is announcing drawdowns, just because hopefully we can recover economically from all of the depredations that have been inflicted upon the entire state of Minnesota. I don't even know the numbers on immigrant businesses, like on Lake Street, for instance. But through the Minnesota committee, which is I can't remember the woman who chairs it, but Rachel Carlson is the person that I received an invite from, and I believe she's an advisor to the majority leader. And I had the opportunity to hear a bunch of testimony. Chairman or Chairwoman Chair Port. But I remember some of the committee members, like Senator Dibble, Senator May Quaid. I remember the people who looked me in the eye, and who we collectively. And I know, I don't want to make such a sharp distinction on political identity, because I personally feel there should be more than just a binary in that regard. But progressive values, I'm about that life. I am about that life, and we only have those rights that we are willing to assert and defend. And so I just want to thank the good people of Minnesota and the leadership of the DFL, and even the leadership of the other party, whatever, I don't, they might be just called Republican in this state. But there are times when something so dramatic happens and so existentially challenging that we have to think as human beings and as Americans. There are certain times when we need to really think about what's set before us, because like I said, just the tyranny and the fascism that we are experiencing to this day right now in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, we need to not let that ever happen again. And that's going to take strategy. It's going to take complete follow-up from all aspects of Minnesota state operational and legislative authority. It's going to take maybe classifying ICE as high risk because of the complete disorder being wrought upon Minneapolis, St. Paul. Maybe hotels and rental operations, car rental operations, should be required to increase the insurance setup so that it's considered an inherently risky behavior. Maybe there can be checkpoints to make sure that agents who are here are required to be licensed if they're going to administer law in the state of Minnesota. We need to reinforce our rights to free speech, our right to peaceably assemble, our rights. Look at the press. Look at the nonviolent 9. There's so much going on right now. This minute, all eyes are on Minnesota, and we need now more than ever to stand together. And as we continue to investigate and hold accountable every single violation of law in our state, we need to stand together. This is Chase Iron Eyes on AM950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, powered by Native Roots Radio. Thank you.